of this webinar this morning. International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women. This day also marks a call to action for accelerating women's equality. Now, the very first International Women's Day gathering actually dates back to 1911, and this year's theme is all about choosing to challenge. A challenged world is an alert world, and from challenge comes change. And today is the day to celebrate women's achievements, raise awareness against bias, and take action for equality. So in terms of an overview of the proceedings this morning, in a few moments, we will kick off our Smashing Stereotypes panel discussion. But before we begin and introduce our panelists, I would like to introduce you to my fellow MSLETB colleagues who would like to say a few words. And firstly, I might direct to Fiona Kieran, our Training Centre Manager in Ballina. Thanks, Fiona. Fiona, to pop there out. There we go. Hi, Fiona.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of MSLETB, I'd like to welcome you all here this morning to our webinar for International Women's Day. As Jessica said, this day is set aside for recognising the accomplishments of women and to celebrate women's rights. It also provides a useful opportunity to reinforce the fact that everybody has a role to play in forging a more gender-balanced world. According to UN Women, they consider education to be one of the greatest game changers for women and girls around the world and see it as an enabler for women's economic, political and social empowerment and gender equality. So as Jessica said, the theme of this year's International Women's Day is to choose to challenge. So we can all choose to challenge and call out gender bias. We can all choose to seek and celebrate women's achievements. And here at MSLETB, we're choosing to challenge stereotypes. So we've got a fantastic panel lined up this morning, and I really hope that you all enjoyed the event. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fiona, and much appreciated. I'd also like to introduce you to Sean Burke, our Area Training Manager. Sean?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my name is Sean Burke. I'm the Area Training Manager for MSLETB, and I'm really delighted to be here with you this morning. Just before I do welcome you, I would like to just acknowledge and to pass on our condolences to Tara Rodgers. She was one of our panel speakers, but unfortunately Tara's mother passed away on Friday. And just on behalf of MSLETB and on behalf of myself personally and on behalf of the team, I just want to acknowledge Tara's genuine wish to be involved, but our commiserations on behalf of her and her family. Of course, this is, choose to challenge. It's my firm belief. Sometimes I struggle with, do we need a particular day to acknowledge something? Mother's Day, Father's Day, we have all these days, and International Women's Day is really important for projecting out or getting people to think about, why we need to choose to challenge. But it's my belief that we should celebrate success every day, and we should choose to challenge any form of discrimination against any group, gender, race, irrespective of what it is. We should call that out. So even though sometimes I think, do we need a particular day? I think we do, because it brings it to the fore. It makes us think about it. And we should look forward to the day when we don't need to do something special. It's just part of our everyday. And that's really what would be my ambition for the future. We have a fantastic panel. It's really well balanced panel when you look at and I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't want to be stealing Jessica's the work that Jessica has done. We have a fantastic panel, but I also want to congratulate and celebrate my own team, the MSLETB sales team, and all of my team that are on this call. There's loads of my colleagues on this call, and I want to celebrate their success, because the success of MSLETB, it relies on all of the team and all of our colleagues. So all of my colleagues on this call, congratulations on your success, and let's celebrate your success every day as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity to say hello, and I really look forward to hearing some of the stories from our panel and from my own team. Thank you very much, Jessica.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you. And just doing a bit of trickery here in the background. Okay, so I would now like to introduce you to our panelists. I am very, very excited to introduce you to these three ladies who have very kindly donated their time to share their experiences with us under this theme, Smashing Stereotypes. Now, as Sean mentioned, unfortunately, Tara cannot be with us here today due to her family bereavement, and our thoughts are with her and her family at this time. But Dr. Attractor Foley has very kindly stepped in to share her experiences with you, or with us all here today. So just to kind of give you some, I suppose, a background on the ladies that are going to be sharing their experiences this morning. So firstly, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Mary-Liz Trant. Welcome, Mary-Liz, who is the Executive Director for Delivery in the Further Education and Training Authority, SOLAS. She has a very wide-ranging brief, which includes the National Apprenticeship System, skills to advance and upskilling in the Irish workforce, enterprise engagement, technology enhanced learning and the National e-College platform, learner support, and a new 10-year strategy on adult literacy, numeracy and digital skills. Now, previously, Mary-Liz held senior posts in the Higher Education Authority, leading on enterprise engagement and equity of access to higher education, including the Springboard Plus initiative. And earlier in her career, she taught at second level, third level, and she also worked with early school leavers in Dublin and Limerick. She holds a doctorate in education, master's degrees in education and in French, and a higher diploma in education. So you're very welcome, Mary-Liz. Thank you.
My goodness. Thanks very much, Jessica.
No problem. And next on our panel, we have Alwyn Hughes, who is the Learning and Engagement Manager at the City Bin Company, which is a waste management company based in Dublin and in Galway. And City Bin Company is actually one of the employers on the National Sales Apprenticeship programme, and they currently have 2 apprentices enrolled on our programme. Her responsibilities include recruitment, learning and engagement, and her main focus involves facilitating and supporting the frontline crews of City Bin Company with lifelong learning and career development opportunities. Now, Alwyn also previously worked for 21 years as an Army officer in the Defence Forces, and she retired in 2015 in the senior rank of Commandant. She held a number of appointments during her military career, including HR, operations, logistics, training, employee assistance and wellbeing, and general management. She has served both at home and on overseas missions, including to the Lebanon with the UN, Kosovo, supporting a NATO-led mission, and also in Bosnia in support of an EU mission. And she has a wealth of experience, and her education includes a Bachelor of Commerce in HR, a Master's in Adult Learning and Development. She has a postgraduate in leadership. She has 3 diplomas to her name in military studies, HR, employee assistance and social studies. And last but not least, she is currently studying employment law in the King's Inn. So you're very, very welcome, Alwyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
And last but not least, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Attractor Foley. Attractor has a number of hats to her name. She is a chartered civil engineer, senior civil engineering lecturer in Athlone IT. She previously held the position of head of civil engineering department, and she is a postgraduate program developer and coordinator. She has accumulated a number of awards in her career, including Chartered Engineer of the Year from Engineers Ireland in 2002. She also has an award for achieving a first-class honours degree in civil engineering from the Institution of Civil Engineers in the UK. And her PhD research in Cardiff University was actually awarded by the British Federation of Women Graduates. Attractor has worked in the UK and in Ireland, including with Murphy Contractors, on projects such as tunnelling, pharmaceuticals, gas pipeline and multi-storey developments. She has also worked on site for the London Underground, and as a result of the research she conducted, she was actually recruited to Arup Consulting Engineers, which is one of the largest engineering consulting firms in Ireland. She has been involved in the analysis and design of numerous bridges in the UK, including the Channel Tunnel Rail Link, and in Ireland on many of the motorway schemes, and also for private clients, including Limerick University. Attractor has recently returned to study at a postgraduate level in offshore engineering, and has actually developed programs for Athlone IT, embedding these themes of offshore and onshore sustainable energy provision. Attractor has also developed and actually runs a yearly mentoring partnership with local secondary schools to encourage female participation in the engineering industry, and this continues to grow year on year. And I'd like to welcome Attractor now to our panel. Thank you very much. Okay, so ladies, I would like to kick off with some questions. And I will run through the questions with each of you in turn. The first one I would like to pose to our panel is, can you talk to us about your current role and how your experience has brought you to this role? Mary-Liz, if you don't mind, I might start with yourself just on that question, please.
Thanks, Jessica, and good morning, everyone. And just to say, I'm just looking at all the attendees this morning. I mean, Sean mentioned it. You know, this is a day to be grateful and to say thanks to, you know, particularly the women all around the country who are working just so hard, whether it's in education or in enterprise. And, you know, it's just a day to, I suppose, to reflect and to mark kind of the, you know, what we've achieved over the last year, but also what we've achieved in Ireland. And I think there's a lot to celebrate today, and also to recognise our male colleagues as well, who, you know, we all work with, you know, so you know, we're, I suppose, just such an important part of, you know, the 21st century workforce, and how we all get on together. And I think, you know, I know I'm sure we'd get to it, but I mean, I think the support and the you know, the equality that's now starting to happen in Ireland, you know, it's really notable, and it's reflected in, you know, in a lot of the kind of the feedback that's coming now on the statistics, you know. So, you know, I just think today is a great day for that. As you mentioned, Jessica, my role, you know, it's I work with a fantastic team of women and men, most working from their kitchen tables and their bedrooms over the last year, on a whole range of areas. You mentioned them, you know, e-college, apprenticeship, enterprise engagement, a fantastic 10-year strategy, a first for Ireland on adult literacy and numeracy. And you know, I suppose it's a super job to have, and to be working with a team like that. And we're reaching out right across the system, whether it's to second level or with, you know, working with higher education colleagues, and really looking forward to hearing Attractor talking later as well. The enterprise engagement side of my job is really important. And, you know, I suppose just that connection between education, careers, opportunities. And I think, you know, hearing Alwyn talk later about City Bin and the apprenticeship and the kind of educational opportunities that are provided there in a really innovative company like that, you know, is so interesting. You mentioned early school leavers in my bio. That was where, you know, in terms of getting to where I am today and the role I'm working in today, that's where it kind of all started. It was right back in the early 90s when I came back from studying abroad. Not much work going on, and a job came up, a part-time job came up, and I said I'd give it a go. And you know, I suppose that was the huge game changer for me. That I just realized that actually education was just so important to give people an opportunity to get out of maybe a really tough situation. A lot of the young people I worked with in Ringsend at the time had spent time in some of the youth detention centres. And the only opportunity they had to actually make it, you know, to pick themselves up and to get somewhere in their lives was through what they were doing in the community training workshop that we were in. And I just, you know, I suppose it just was a real lesson for me. I had never before in my life at that stage, my early 20s, kind of seen just how tough life can be for some young people, you know, in this country. And just then just the way in which education could actually help and lift people up. So from there, I suppose I went on, and as somebody gave me great advice that I needed to do a HDIP, my teaching qualification, if I wanted to stay in the business. So I did that as a mature student, and I went on from there. And you know, as you pointed out, I worked in, you know, I taught, and then I worked in you know, I suppose further and higher education. and then most recently, I suppose, back to SOLAS and to, you know, a fantastic brief, you know, expanding apprenticeship. And I know we'll mention it later. We just passed the 1,000 women in apprenticeship mark this year, which is still a lot of work to do, but a lot of progress as well. So maybe that I'll stop there, Jessica. I don't want to take too long on that question, but just that gives you a bit of a flavour. Yeah,
that's great, Mary-Liz. Thanks very much. Thanks for sharing that. I might pose the same question then next to Alwyn, if you don't mind. So if you could talk about your current role and how your experience has brought you to this role, Alwyn. Thanks.
No problem, Jessica. So thank you very much for having me here today. So I am the Learning and Engagement Manager for the City Bin Company, as you've said, and we're a waste management company servicing thousands of homes across Dublin and Galway. So we're kind of known for our red bins. It's a hugely progressive company. I feel very privileged to be working for the City Bin Company. We're 5 times winner of the Deloitte Best Managed Company, and we've twice been nominated for the European Business Awards in the category of customer experiences. So quite unusual, I think, for a company in the waste industry. Again, maybe a stereotype there. So my own role, it's hugely exciting. It's hugely rewarding. And I believe it's a very progressive twist of HR. Yes, we focus on attracting and retaining the very best people, but underpinning everything that we do is our employee brand promise. And that really is, like, in addition to promising our employees with fairness, courtesy, respect, that we will support them with, I suppose, reaching their lifelong educational goals and opportunities. And this is something that's really driven by our CEO. It's his initiative. It's driven right across the company, and it's because we're a company who really recognise the very physical, tough job of our frontline workers. We call them the heroes. They are. I suppose sometimes they're the unrecognised frontline workers, the guys on the back of the trucks. And I suppose, you know, when you think about it, these are manual labour jobs, and we're very conscious of it. And so we feel it's our responsibility to ensure to equip them with skills and with education to give them opportunities to develop their own careers, either within the company or beyond. And we have successfully done this. We've delivered this with driver or helper to driver training programs. We had a driver last year after the Explore program went on and to take on paramedic training. So we have this right across the company. And really our strategy for achieving this, we couldn't do it on our own, obviously, and that's where we are firm partners with the ETBs, with SOLAS, with the regional skills managers. So all of you ladies on the meeting here today as well. So we're just hugely grateful for that. My own previous career as an army officer, really it was a fantastic experience, and one I'm extremely proud of. I'm very grateful for. It has made me who I am. I have a family out of it, married to an army man, three children, army children, if you like. I suppose it has given me fantastic, diverse skill sets, experiences both at home and overseas, and not just in HR, but also I've kind of managed in operations, in logistics, employee wellbeing and general management. And I think all of these things help me to be maybe a better HR manager, if you like, or as good as I possibly can, because I feel I understand the challenges of all the line managers within our company, having held a lot of those roles before. And I think this is something that the Army gave me, and maybe not a lot of other HR professionals might have had that, I suppose, previous benefit of having that experience. I suppose as well, the management and leadership role of an officer in the Defence Forces, I describe it more like a vocation. It's not 9 to 5. It can be very, very intense. You take people overseas, you're responsible for them 24/7. And I think this is something as well, I suppose, maybe a skill that has really has benefited me in my current role as well, and hopefully benefits the company. So
that's great. Thank you very much, Alwyn. And Attractor, I might ask you the same question if you don't mind. So just if you could tell us about your current role and how your experience has brought you to this role. Thanks, Attractor.
Firstly, to say thanks very much for the invitation to attend today. It's lovely to be part of this, so thank you very much. Well, I suppose my background, I come from rural Ireland. I would have attended a traditional convent school at second level. I wouldn't have had anything in terms of engineering subjects beyond, I suppose, maths. I probably didn't know any single civil engineer. I certainly didn't know what civil engineers did. And you know, that wouldn't have been the case for the boys' school in the town at that time, but it was the case for the girls' school. So really, I kind of think of myself sometimes as a bit of an accidental engineer, because essentially what happened to me was the summer before my leaving cert, as we often did, we would all go en masse to London to try and earn some money. And that particular summer, I was having a really hard time finding any work, and I sort of backed myself into a corner where I couldn't afford to stay and I couldn't afford to go. So my uncle, who was a foreman on a building site, said to me, if I got you a job with some of the engineers, would you help them? Would you go in? And I was terrified at the prospect of it, but it really was rocking a hard place. So I said, sure, look, we'll give it a go. And so that summer, I worked as an assistant of some sort to two fantastic Irish guys, two Irish engineers. And, you know, for those of you who know London summers, the sky is blue. I surveyed with these guys, taught me to survey through the summer. And I just had the best time. I just absolutely loved the art of surveying. I was absolutely hooked. So I came back to Ireland in September to sit my Leaving Cert year. And the only courses that I applied for at that stage were civil engineering. I just was so enamored by it. Now, I do recall when I came back, you know, there was a little bit of pressure placed on me to sort of maybe look at those choices again, you know, choose something else on the forms. But I held firm. But, you know, I often still think back on the fact that I did feel that there was a lot of risk in the path I was taking. And for me, the risk wasn't about whether or not I'd like the job, because I felt with the little exposure that I had that I would. For me, the risk was I didn't know any engineers. I didn't have the subjects. I wasn't sure I could, you know, if I went down this road that I could deliver, I suppose, you know. But I went to the Cork RTC at the time, and I did a certificate and a diploma. So I'm an output of the ladder system, as we would say, you know, little risks, step by step. So I said I'd give the cert a go, and I did. And sure, we got there. And then I said, well, actually, there were no jobs. So that was a lot to do with it as well. I said I'd go a bit further, did a diploma. And then I transferred over to the UK. And that's really, I think, where I started to really find my feet. I went to Cardiff University. I studied for an honours degree in civil engineering, and delighted at the end of it. It was a great experience, and I graduated top of my class with an first class honours degree. And I suppose with those grades, I ended up going on then to do a PhD. Again, not necessarily part of the initial plan, but that's kind of the way the path kind of meandered. So I ended up doing a PhD in the area of artificial intelligence and bridge design. I developed a software package for conceptual design and costing of bridges. At the same time, over the years, I worked on site. That was my starting point back to where I'd started. So I worked for Murphy Contractors. I was seconded to British Gas. I worked on London Underground. I worked in Waterloo Station, where on the Channel Tunnel terminal. I've worked I came back to Ireland then, and I worked as a senior bridge engineer in Arab Consulting Engineers. And again, I've done bridges for, you know, UK and Ireland. Change of direction again. I decided then that I would look at working within engineering education, and that's sort of where I am positioned now. I absolutely love the opportunities that came to me in this space, because I suppose the role is very varied. I lecture to all students in engineering from first year up to master's level. So there's great variety in terms of, I suppose, the range of subjects and the you know, the difficulty. I also, in more recent years, travelled to the UK and to Strathclyde University and Newcastle University, and then they do a combined offshore engineering masters. So I did that, and then I came back to Ireland, and I suppose that kind of fed into then my role in terms of developing postgraduate programs. So I'm a developer and coordinator of our postgraduate program. So I would have led the design teams for all of the masters that we have in our faculty. And then I suppose another aspect to my work is, you know, linking in with the second level schools as well. So I design and run a kind of a week-long pop-up course, if you like, and really it's parachuting girls, transition year girls from local schools into a week in the life of. So basically I design a week where they come in and they sit in on labs, they get involved in workshops, lectures, and by the time they leave on Friday, they've seen every single discipline in engineering that we have to offer. And I suppose, truthfully, in all of that, of course, what are we looking for there? Well, it would be wonderful if we got some of these girls to join us in AIT. But I think for me, and again, harking back to my 2 engineers, you know, and the mentoring and the value of what they gave to me, I think, you know, if we can show these girls, you know, what third level engineering experiences are like, you know, even if they elect to go somewhere else to do that, if we can sort of take some of the risk out of their decision making, if you like, and maybe just give them enough confidence to maybe say yes to trying it somewhere, then from my point of view, I see that as a kind of a result, you know. So I suppose when I think back on my career to date, I am very proud of what I've done. I'm really conscious of the huge value that mainly male mentors have given me. I mean, I've had wonderful support from the guys that I've worked with over the years, and the women. It's just that in my sector, it's going to be largely male, you know, because of the numbers, you know. And so I suppose that's, I think, why I feel so passionately about mentoring young people, because I think times do change. And, you know, even engineering, the space changes. But I think what's persistent and what's always there is that it's always essential to nurture talent. I think that never changes. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Attractor. Appreciate that. An interesting point about, you know, mentoring younger people to bring them into the fold. It doesn't matter whether they come with you to AIT, but as long as they're in that direction, I think that's great. So we might move to a second question. Mary-Liz, I have a question for you actually in relation to apprenticeships. So apprenticeships would have generally been seen as a male-orientated model of training. Can you give us your thoughts on that? And, you know, in your opinion, do you think that that's changing?
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, I mean, I think it really fits in with the smashing stereotypes kind of theme for today, because, you know, as I mentioned earlier, we have passed the 1,000 women apprentice mark. You know, this year we actually, I think, have about 1,050, I think, at this stage. And, you know, that compares to just 26 women apprentices training back in 2015. So, you know, huge credit to the system and to everybody working, you know, in the system. You know, that has moved on a lot. Now we have about 20,000 apprentices, so 1,000 out of 20,000, you know, we still have a long way to go, but it's a great start. And I think the, you know, we made quite a bit of celebration out of that, reaching that milestone mark. And, you know, one of the great privileges for me while we were working on kind of the celebration was meeting the most phenomenal women apprentices. You know, women like Laura Hanrahan, Ellen Cummins, Avril Kennedy, Joanne Gigan, Zoe Fitzgerald, women who have really smashed, you know, in craft apprenticeships as well as some of the newer areas, working as plumbers, working as electricians, working as sheet and metal workers, as well as in the newer areas, biopharma, tech, international financial services. And these, I think, are you know, these are the women that inspire me, you know, and, you know, they're the younger generation of women who are coming up, who are not afraid to do what they want to do. And to forge that path, even if, like in the case of Joanne, she's the first sheet and metal worker in Ireland in 17 years. She, you know, she talks about the fantastic reception she got from her company and, you know, in her training off the job, but she was, you know, prepared to take that step and, you know, do that. And I just have the most enormous admiration, you know, for women, you know, who take that step. And, you know, I think I was hearing it a bit, and when Attractor was speaking about, you know, the pressure you got, Attractor, when you were, you know, wanting to take that step with civil engineering when you were leaving school, and kind of having the courage to say, no, this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it. And that is so powerful for the girls and the women who are coming up then afterwards. And, you know, I think, you know, that, what's that expression? You can't be it if you can't see it. You know, it's just so important for us to have these younger women coming up now and, you know, really showing, you know, what's possible. And that, was it Ursula von der Leyen's video over the weekend for International Women's Day? There's no such thing as jobs for men and jobs for women. You know, that just doesn't, that's not the 21st century we're living in now. You know, we're not there yet, but I think the fact that we have that base now, that platform is fantastic. You know, and there's such support and such celebration of it has happened around the country. So yeah, so I think it's really positive, Jessica. And you know, Apprenticeship's just one example, but there's examples all over the country of women smashing stereotypes now, particularly younger women.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Mary-Liz. And like, it's very exciting to see those figures coming out. And when the announcements were made about the 1,000 female apprentice in Ireland, that it buoys you up basically, and it's moving in a positive direction, as you said yourself. So that's brilliant. No, thank you very much for that. And I suppose our next question then I would like to ask Alwyn, actually. So Alwyn, the Irish Examiner recently, actually there last year, they published some interesting stats that were coming from July of last year, 2020, and those stats state that 7.1% of Army personnel are female. I suppose what I would like to ask is, like, what stereotypes can you smash for us, Alwyn, about the Defence Forces and the role of women in the Defence Forces as a whole?
Yeah, sure. The figure actually I think has fallen since to 6.9%, but at the same time, 10% there at the officer corps level, there are 10% of officers are females. It is way behind Europe. If you look at the British Army, you know, between 10 and 15% is what you'll see in other countries across the world. I think the British Army is about 10%. In my experience, the stereotype is kind of external to the Army. So really, you come in, you're given a rank, you just get on with your job, and it's very much like that. That is my experience of it. And where I see the kind of the fall off is in retention of females. I think that's the biggest challenge, as opposed to the recruitment piece. The first females joined the Army some 40 years ago, and that's 13 years before me. And over the last few days, I tried to kind of count how many females in the Army are left that were, you know, serving before me in those 13 years, and there's only 5. So that'll just show you that's really where the challenge lies for the Defence Forces, and it really boils down to really the work-life balance of having a family, and I've experienced that myself, and the requirement to serve overseas. I do know that the Defence Forces hugely encourage females to, you know, and they really are working hard to try and address both kind of the recruitment and and retention. One of my colleagues, or former colleagues, Sharon Mcmahon, will be heading off overseas now shortly. She'll be leaving her 3 children at home, but they've accommodated her on a 3-month mission. So they are certainly working to kind of, I suppose, address that issue. I suppose some other things that stereotypes I could smash for you. There are females in every corps in the Defence Forces, from engineers to the infantry corps, artillery, logistics. I would have served in 2 of the corps, infantry and in the logistics. We have a female general, Maureen O'Brien. She's a 1-star general. We have females in the naval service. I'm sure you've all heard of Commander Roberta O'Brien and Orla Gallagher. So they were the first females into the naval service in 1995. They came in a year behind me. They've captained their own ships, as have many naval officers behind them. And then we've had Sub-Lieutenant Talia Britton. She was the first female to pass. It's a naval service diving course. It's a really grueling course. So she was the first lady there. So with somebody in that unit. So the big thing for me is that the Defence Forces is not all, you know, roaring and shouting. People have seen the programmes over the years. They're disturbing, I'd imagine, you know, to watch. But really, that's just one element of what military training, what is required. And really, that part of it is about simulating kind of battlefields and, you know, exercising troops to react under extreme pressure and simulating kind of war, if you like. So really, that's just one part of it. You know, the Defence Forces offers huge education and training and development. Everybody in the Defence Forces is trained to carry out the role of the person immediately senior to them. So it's a very, very progressive organisation, and I can see that having left myself. There's so many things I go back to, and I say even the apprenticeship model. There was an army apprenticeship apprentice school there. It was closed down a number of years ago, but they had it, and even myself just learning on social learning theories, on the job training, on the job learning. The Defence Forces has that. You know, that's their model. So there are some of the stereotypes maybe.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Alwyn. And that's really interesting about what you said there about each person is trained to do the job of their superior. And like there's a lot to be learned from that. I know from coming from business myself prior to moving into education that, you know, having that, I suppose, support around you from your fellow colleagues, you know, because people obviously get sick or go on holidays, but it's surprising how many companies aren't prepared. So it's a very good learning. And thank you for that, Alwyn. That's great. I love your point about the shouting. It's not all about shouting, and I suppose we do see an awful lot on telly, you know, in movies and that, but it's great to hear that that's just one aspect, and it's a necessary aspect as well. So thank you. So Attractor, I have a question for you, if you don't mind, and it's, I suppose, according to Engineers Ireland, Ireland actually ranks 34th of 36 of the OECD countries for gender balance among the engineering graduates, with actually females making up just 14% of graduates. So I suppose my question really is, you know, what stereotypes can you smash for us about the field of civil engineering and the role of women in civil engineering?
Yes, yeah, the numbers of females in the engineering space has always been an issue. But I think the most fundamental stereotype that we have in civil engineering, maybe in particular, is this idea of nearly the token female. And I think that's the stereotype that we need to smash from the outset. You know, like I feel very, very strongly that, you know, that the important thing to recognise is when you meet a female engineer, she's not there because she's filling some quota. She's there because she's capable. She's there because she's as capable of doing the job as anybody else, you know. She's earned the right to be there. She's equal to her counterparts in all respects. So I think it's really important to sort of see why, when you see females, why they're there. Historical fact, you know, the first woman to graduate as an engineer in the whole of Europe was Alice Perry in 1906, and she came out of university in Galway. So, you know, women, female engineers are, you know, we've been there for a long time. And, you know, it is absolutely true to say that females, in terms of smashing stereotypes, females are in every single discipline of civil engineering without exception. So any side of civil engineering, rail, bridges, buildings, pipelines, water, waste, they're everywhere. You know, we really do get around. So that's the first thing to say. There isn't a side to civil engineering that women aren't appropriate for, and that's important. I thought in 2020, Pat Lucy, who was the president of the Construction Industry Federation, I thought he gave a very honest presentation to the Construction Industry Federation that year about levelling the playing field for women. And to be fair to organisations like Engineers Ireland, like CIF, you know, there are measures being taken. You know, the CIF would have a diversity and inclusion charter. You know, they all try to raise the profile of women and the lack of women. Having said that, it remains very stubborn. The CSO would show that only 8.5% of the workforce within construction are female. You know, there's a gender balance in business survey in 2019, and that showed the lowest representation of senior positions in terms of females in any sector of employment was in the construction sector at just 9%. You could be disheartened. You could look across the water, though I'm afraid it's no better over there. 12% of the workforce in the UK, the engineering workforce, would be female, and that's from a workforce that's available of 47%. So, you know, it's a problem, and it's a problem for more than just Ireland. But for me, I suppose it always comes back to education. I came across a piece of research that showed in the UK that children as young as 7 had made up their mind that engineering was for boys and not for girls, which I thought was disheartening. So I take from that you can't start career guidance early enough. I mean, the idea that career guidance starts in second level, I just think, and I would always, for my children are in school in Roscommon here, and, even when they were in preschool, I would have done little Bridge Connects challenges with them. And I go in all the time. I was in last week on a Zoom with them for Engineers Week. It's really important to bring, each of us to them and say, look, this is who we are, this is what we do. I think that's a responsibility that we have, I think third level, my sector has a huge opportunity, and I think we haven't gone near far enough. I think the whole idea of apprenticeships and that responsibility for teaching and learning being shared between, we'll say, the education provider, the student, but also industry. I think there's a trio there that we really haven't utilised. And I know that apprenticeships is sort of thought of around more on the trades end for engineering. But I think that between, what you call it, apprenticeship, industry collaboration, I think there's an awful lot more work to be done there in this linkage between us all. I also think that there needs to be much better linkage between second and third level anyways, because I think that we need to improve on the flow of information. I think male and female students, need to be accepting of each other. And I think there's an awful lot more work in terms of, we'll say, college recruitment that needs to be done. I think the colleges have to do an awful lot more in terms of recruitment of females. I think they could do more in terms of accessing females in terms of when they go out to schools, etc., for trying to recruit into engineering. I think industry has to do an awful lot more. I think industry should be much more open to opening up their doors and showcasing their fantastic businesses, because really it's when a person sees what's within and what the opportunities are, that's when you start to really lure people in. And all of that, I suppose, is on the attracting in part. But I also think that, another vitally important part of all of that work is the retention aspect as well. I think if the construction and the engineering industry want to achieve their own targets, then they can't afford not to engage with half of the workforce that's available. So I think that the image of our sector, I suppose, over the years may not have been great. We probably look like we're all steel and concrete, and to some extent we still are. But there's a massive drive towards digitalization of our industry, and there are jobs in our sector now that nobody even would have understood of 10 years ago. So I think, that's making the industry far more relevant. So it's done a lot, and I think there's a lot more that it can do. I also think that, it's important to take into consideration the pay parity. I mean, in Ireland, not just in construction, but generally speaking, there's a 14% pay gap between, what a guy will earn and what a girl will earn for the same work. So that can't continue. And I think in our sector, if we're going to get serious about trying to balance up the numbers, the issue of pay parity has to really be addressed. And then as well, I think that whole life-work balance. I mean, if you're a female, if you're a woman, if you're a mother, and you'd like to also be a working engineer, I think the industry really does have to go further in terms of, and for the guys too, it's just not a female thing. But I think the digitalization of our industry will allow new opportunities around working. So I think we're going to start to see some great benefits that will come out of that. Another thing that I feel as well, I suppose, is that, for life reasons or otherwise, you can have women who've taken leave for, say, family or whatever their reasons, and then they'd like to come back. But, skills become stagnant and things move on. And I think it can be very intimidating for a woman to try and come back after a period of leave, maybe feeling that her skills aren't quite where they were, and to try and knock on the door and reintegrate into, an organisation that is predominantly male. I just think it's something that the industry should be aware of, and maybe might be more obvious in reaching out and trying to say, if the time and when the time is right and you'd like to try something again, let's just do that. I think that's really important and something that's missed in our sector. I suppose I'd just like to finish up by saying, as I said in my previous, some of the very best teachers that I've ever had and I've ever witnessed are guys, and some of the people with the best work ethic that I've ever come across again are guys, you know, and as I said, that probably comes from the fact that there's such a lopsidedness to the figures in our sector, you know. But gender parity is really important. And I mean, even from the business case, you know, like there's more productivity, there's more creativity, there's more innovation when we come together. So I think that, you know, the very best possibilities, you know, and outcomes occur when men and women work together side by side, I think in an honest and an open way. Thank you.
That's very insightful, Attractor. Thanks so much. Some really valid points that you've made there, and some really great ideas as well. And to me, it shouts of the need for communication and a collaborative effort across industry, education, and I suppose families as well. It doesn't just stop there, I suppose. And I love your point, sad as it was, that children as young as 7 have already made up their mind about certain types of careers. And I think that just shouts an opportunity for everybody really to pay attention, and that you raising that awareness would hopefully help us do that. So, and your point about the token female, very, very true. You know, I think it's, you know, it's not just a case of let's get the numbers up, you know, 50-50 male, female. It's about, you know, are you qualified? You know, do you have the experience? It's not about, you know, what sex you are, you know. So this token female, we may have to do it in some cases to get the numbers up, but on the whole, I don't think it's necessarily the solution that we need. But thank you very much for your points there. Very, very interesting. I suppose just in the interest of time, I might just very quickly ask each of our panelists one final question, if you don't mind. And Mary-Liz, if you don't mind, my question is, how do you think we can prevent gender stereotyping and enable people to see past the typical stereotypes?
Big question, Jessica. Well, look, I mean, I think even this morning, I suppose we've heard a lot, you know, of real practical kind of real life experience and examples. And I'm sure everybody on the call, you know, has got experience of where, you know, we actually are moving on, you know, where there are still areas that there's lots of work to be done. I mean, I just over the weekend, I had a quick look at the, you know, the European Gender Equality Index that they do. And last year they reported, you know, Ireland's actually 7th out of 28 countries. It was 28 countries last year. Obviously it's 27 now. And we moved up a place, you know, so we are doing things, we are doing good things. And I think we should be, you know, we should be recognizing that and you know, and patting ourselves on the back for that. And I think women, you know, in the way we walk the walk and we do our jobs, I think we're contributing to that in a very significant way. I mean, I think Attractor's point, some of, you know, that was really important, you know, where Attractor's talking about going in to speak to school, you know, her own children's schools and other schools, you know, that's a big part, I suppose, working with, you know, young boys and girls, and it is boys and girls because, you know, we're all living in this world together, and, you know, really showing, I suppose, the opportunity, you know, somebody like Attractor going in, really successful civil engineer, really interesting stories about a fantastic, you know, work life and opportunity, and, you know, things like building bridges, everybody identifies with that. I mean, it's fantastic as a visual image, you know, and just those children probably went home and, you know, talked to their parents and said, wow, you know, there might be some girls saying, you know, just a different mindset, you know. And so I think Attractor's absolutely right, you know, that we can start early enough with our own children, with our own children's friends, if we have opportunities to work with schools and to, you know, at that early age. And then I think it's about, you know, in our own work lives and with our own peers, you know, encouraging younger women coming up, and showcasing every chance we have, you know, even days like today, you know, but onwards from, you know, that you know, my work, I have an opportunity to do it with apprenticeship, with, you know, skills in work, you know, the whole upskilling in work, with e-college, you know, super opportunity, and a great team in SOLAS that's very committed to that, you know, among all sorts of other things, but very committed to inclusion and diversity. So, you know, I think it's about really practical things, and about, you know, taking the time to be proactive and to actually, you know, single out and showcase and spotlight where there are areas, as Attractor says, where, you know, the numbers aren't great, or as Alwyn says, we're still behind in the Defence Forces in Ireland, but it is improving. And even Alwyn, when you were talking about the women, you know, I've heard of all of them individually, but there are fantastic, you know, senior high achieving women in the Army and the Navy as well. You know, when you put them all together, and I think Marie Gould was saying, you know, a few years ago, I knew Colette as well, Colette Harrison, only 4 women cadets in the Army in those days. You know, that's moved on so much. And I think every industry, every area of life, you know, has a responsibility to kind of really get that out there, showcase those women, give those women opportunities to tell their stories, to actually, you know, connect with the younger girls and women coming up and sort of say, actually, this is something that's potentially for you as well. And, you know, the sky's the limit. There are no barriers. There should be no barriers. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mary-Liz, and some very valid points that you've made there. I really appreciate that. And Alwyn, I might ask you the same question, if you don't mind, just about, you know, how do you think we can prevent that gender stereotyping and help people to see past those stereotypes?
Yeah, look, I think it's been answered really. It's people can't imagine, girls can't imagine, or boys, a career if they don't hear about it or if they don't see it. And I think that's really what it boils down to. What Attractor is doing there, going into primary schools, things like that. And I think it's kind of like the GAA model or the IRFU. I think industry could take a really big lesson from that. When you think about it, more than half of the workforce are female. And so those industries that are striving to get employees really need to kind of realise that and do what the sporting industries are doing. So I suppose that's my way around that one.
Great, thanks, Alwyn. And that's a really valid point. Like, it's the GAA, I suppose, it speaks to so many people and speaks volumes because it's something that we can understand, you know, on a local level, community level. So using that as a model would be a brilliant idea. So thank you for that. Attractor, what are your thoughts on that in terms of seeing past that stereotype and getting there?
Yeah, I think for me it's always early education. I think is the key for me, and I think, you know, when I think about my own kids and what I think when I think about what it was like for me at their stage and if I could have said something to me, what would I say? So I tried to impress on them. I think that, you know, it's fantastic that each and every one of us are different. And it would be awful if we all had the same talents, you know. So there'll be things that, you know, I'm strong at and naturally not that great at, and the same for everybody else, you know. And I think it's important to understand that that's the way it should be. It's fine, and play to, you know, understand your strengths and then play to your strengths, you know. And I think that, you know, as females, I think sometimes we're, you know, we tend to look for, you know, absolute perfection, otherwise it's not worth doing at all. And I think that we can be overly cautious sometimes, you know, and maybe that's something that men do a little differently. But I think that, you know, what I try to impress on my own kids is that, you know, give everything, give it a try and hope for success, you know, but that if that doesn't come your way, just be open then to learning what the failure teaches us, you know. And I think that's the sort of the courage that I try to impress on my kids, to try and look at life in that way, to be brave enough to give something a go and to be okay if it didn't quite work out as planned, you know. But I think if boys and girls are taught to be brave in that way, then I don't think stereotypes come into it. I think they play to their strengths and they do what fits them. And I think that's what I try and impress on mine, if that answers the question. But
that's great. Thanks very much, Attractor. And I suppose really that rings so true, I suppose, for females, that, you know, trying to create that perfectionism. But I suppose a quote I heard recently is done is better than perfect. Yeah. So and I love your point there about, you know, encouraging children to be brave, you know, so that's a very interesting point. Thank you very much. Ladies, thank you very much for going through my grueling questions. I would like to open it up to the floor now. Siobhan, I believe you might have a couple of questions coming from the floor.
I do indeed. Thanks very much, Mary-Liz, Attractor and Alwyn. That was really interesting to hear. Just a couple of points, first of all. Mary Brody just made a really good point that work-life balance shouldn't be seen just as a female-only issue, that it would be very positive if the narrative was changed. And I think this fits in very well with what the ladies were saying. And second of all, Claire Mcmahon. Claire is one of our employers on the Sales Apprenticeship programme. She is involved with Calix down in Kells, County Meath. But Calix, this morning, they've started, a lady called Sarah is the first female apprenticeship instrument engineer who started with them today. So congratulations, Sarah, and you're welcome to the world of apprenticeships. So a couple of questions then. Lorraine, you asked about what is the greatest achievement. So Attractor, Alwyn and Mary-Liz, what is your greatest achievement?
What, so 20 seconds, Siobhan, is it? Yeah, look, I'll jump in maybe, and just I suppose maybe just to pick out something kind of, everything's a work in progress, I think, in education. We're never quite there, but and I think Kim Mulcahy's on the call, who, you know, a big shout out to Kim, who kind of worked with me on this at the time. 3 years ago, we did the first generation apprenticeship competition. And it was the first time that there was this showcase of just how phenomenal our apprentices in Ireland are. You know, our plumbers, our electricians, our stone cutters. Through that visual 3-dimensional A competition, you know, we had just the most amazing, creations that happened. And for me, it was the first time in Ireland that people got a sense of just how fabulous our apprentices are, the skills they have, how important they are for the economy. And we've kind of built on that. And to me, that was the start of Generation Apprenticeship, the start of getting the message out to the Irish public about just what a phenomenal opportunity apprenticeship is for women as well as for men. So look, that's my offering. Thanks.
Yeah, for me, I'd say it was being commissioned as an officer. So getting through the 21 months of a grueling cadetship, and probably a lot of the training that came behind it as well. So that for me, definitely my biggest achievement.
I suppose for me, when I look back, there's a few things that come to mind, but I suppose if I had to say one, I think probably getting my PhD for me personally was the biggest thing, because it's a journey. You know, and sometimes you feel like you're too far from the beginning, too far from the end. So you've no choice. Again, it's that rock and a hard place situation. You have to keep going. So for me, I think that probably challenged me and my personality more than anything else. So I'm going to hang my hat on that one.
Great, thanks very much, ladies. Siobhan, have we one more question? Maybe just conscious of time for people who may have to move to other meetings. Is there one more question? We possibly lost Siobhan there.
I'm just back. Apologies.
Hi, Siobhan. I was just saying, if we have one more question there, perhaps, just in the interest of time.
Sure, no problem at all. One of the questions came up was, how would you encourage women, young girls even, to join the world of engineering or those male-orientated occupations? Traditionally, is there anything that we could do to encourage them into it?
Yeah, I think, you know, and I'll definitely be reaching out after this to Mary-Liz and to Jessica and to Alwyn, you know, and to yourself, Siobhan. Like I said in one of the earlier questions, I just think that we haven't even scratched the surface yet of the possibilities around, I'm going to call it apprenticeships, and let's say degrees and diplomas, and, you know, not just the trades, but actually I really feel very strongly that, you know, that element of risk in choosing this option. I'm not saying you could get rid of all the risk, but I think you could really reduce it to the point where somebody might consider going into the realm of engineering if you can link the employer with, you know, the higher education and the learner. And I think that trio takes a lot of the risk out of it. If you can offer assurances to girls, you know, promises of work placements, you know, on the job training, you know, and make it, you know, great relevancy of skills. I think if you can build that into the equation, offer that, I think that's going to make taking that jump, if you like, and into the world of engineering more digestible, if you like. I think that's really something that we have lots of work and options for, I think, you know. So I'll be looking forward to having further chats on and seeing what your ideas are on that after this. Thank you.
That's great.
Brilliant, thank you.
There was just one other question actually that was really interesting. Idel asked, do you think COVID-19 has disproportionately affected women?
I think all the figures coming nationally show that they have. You know, women have had to lost more jobs, you know, probably because more women are in part-time jobs and kind of, you know, non-permanent jobs. They've had to step out to look after children, to look after caring responsibilities. It, you know, there's a lot of data to show that it has affected women disproportionately, which I think kind of points to the fact that, you know, our work, you know, in Ireland, while we're making progress, there's still quite a bit of a way to go. And I think it goes back to, I think it was somebody's point, Lorraine's point maybe, or somebody about the work-life balance bit, you know, that, you know, it still generally does come down to women to do the caring parts, you know, to look after children. You know, I'm sure a lot of the women on the call driven demented with homeschooling more than maybe their partners were over the last few months. So, you know, look, I think that is something that's still a reality, I think, you know, in Ireland, but, you know, I think it's about how together we kind of keep moving on that and keep pushing on that and keep looking for, you know, in our personal space as well as our professional space, how we look for better equality, you know, and it's just a work in progress, I think. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mary-Liz. Thank you, ladies. Siobhan, I think just we might close out on questions there, but if anyone, we'll take note of the questions, guys, and we'll share them with the panel afterwards. And if you'd like to leave your email address as well, we will happily respond on those questions. And thank you very much. So just to close,
just to mention as well, Jessica, Sean had to leave. He had another meeting to go to. But Peter Regan, our Director of Further Education and Training, is here, and Tom Grady, our Chief Executive, is also here. If they'd like to say hello.
Tom, would you like to say a few words? No pressure now, landed it on you.
No pressure.
No problem. Might close out.
It's been a great morning, though.
Great. So I suppose just to conclude, on behalf of my colleagues and our participants today, I want to say a wholehearted thank you to each of our fabulous panelists, Alwyn Hughes, Dr. Mary-Liz Trant and Dr. Attractor Foley, who I'm sure you will all agree have provided us with very engaging and insightful conversation around this theme of smashing stereotypes. Alwyn has certainly helped me dispel any misconceptions or stereotyping of the Defence Forces. Anything I saw in movies is not necessarily true. So thank you, Alwyn. And Attractor, you provided some very enlightening ideas on, you know, how we can get women into engineering, for example. You know, it's about starting with education, but not just at second or third level. You know, you're looking at small, younger children. But it also requires that collaborated effort across education and industry. And I love that quote, Attractor, just to quote you, you know, when men and women work side by side in an open and honest way, the very best outcomes are possible. It's about working together. So thank you for that. Mary-Liz, I loved your point about, you know, taking the time to be proactive, you know, and, you know, about education, helping it to lift people up. You have seen that, you know, from the outset, and that kind of drew you into this field, you know, so thank you very much. And as you said yourself, you know, you can't be it if you can't see it. So thank you for that too. So I would also like to thank my colleagues, Siobhan Magner, who very kindly raised the questions there. Siobhan is the National Programme Manager actually for our Sales Apprenticeship programme. I'd also like to thank Idel Gavin, Sean Burke, Fiona Kieran for their support and contributions to this webinar today. Without you guys, this event wouldn't have been possible, so thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed the session as much as we did. I certainly learned a lot about stereotyping, and it has opened my mind to the possibility of change. And thank you all again for your attendance and your questions. I'd like to leave you with a very final quote from Jane Austen from Sense and Sensibility. It isn't what we say or think that defines us, but what we do. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely day, and happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day. Thanks,
Thank you,
Megan.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.